Test, test. Can you hear me? Test, test. Can you hear me? Testing, testing.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this council meeting. Aina mana, aina reo, aina tangata teriti, morena koutou kamihi atu ki ngā konahera, ngā kaimahi, me ngā mema o te iwi whānui, ki tēnei hui konahara e tēnei rā. Mai arahi I a tātou ngā hapori ki te huarahi e mahi ai tātou. I'll translate that. Good morning all. I'd like to welcome councillors, staff and members of the public to this council meeting today. And the little whakatauki at the end was let our many communities guide us in the way we work. I just remind everybody here today, we are live streaming this council meeting. It is being recorded and anything you may say is in the public domain. So I just suggest you're a little careful because if anybody wants to take offence or action, they have a recorded document to go through. We have no apologies, but we have Councillor Gray here by Zoom. There are no late items. Have we any declarations of interest that anyone may have? No, it appears not. We have had 8 requests for people to speak at the public forum, and we've done our best to accommodate them here today. I just remind you, the 8 of you who are going to speak, it's limited to 5 minutes, and between each speaker, we're going to have to cleanse the equipment down the end there. Remember, we're in COVID conditions, so we've accommodated people as best we can, and thank you for your time. So can somebody move and second? Councillor Henry, Councillor Thwaites, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. I declare that carried. We are now in public forum, and the order that these people came in with their requests is the order we will take them. So the first up is Mr. Bruce McCabe. Before Bruce started, the masks are only required if we walk around. Once you're suited, they're at the discretion of the people that are here today. If you want to wear them, feel free to do so. That's your call. Thank you.
Testing. Good. Good morning. I'm Dr. Bruce McCabe, Chairman of the Aotearoa Residents and Ratepayers Association. I've assessed the impacts of Three Waters reform on our community by subtracting the Council Impact Assessment scorecard results for the 2031 coded LTP from those for reform in 2051 coded RF in attachment 3 of the Council Officer's report. By council definition, positive benefit is expected when the calculated benefit score is greater than 1.5. Council data show that there will be no improvement in service from the reform. Council data show that reform may result in an improvement in the council balance sheet and debt capacity. Council is not debt constrained, so this benefit will not be realised. There are also unresolved problems that prevent the transfer of council debt to the entity, further eroding any possible benefit. Council data show that reform will in fact impair council's viability. Reform may result in economies of scale, but this projection is not reliable as the applicability of WIC's assumptions is in doubt. The DIA's financial analysis is so fundamentally flawed that it puts at risk the entire financing of the model and will cause huge cost increases. The projected reduction in water charges is not reliable because of implausible overestimates of CapEx and OpEx efficiencies using the WIC's modelling. Although reform is projected to result in a reduction in water charges, this is not expected to occur because of the over-optimistic CapEx and OpEx efficiencies used in the WIC's modelling and the additional costs associated with the large bureaucracy proposed for the entity. Council has provided a more realistic projection for water charges in 2051 for the no reform scenario. This is close to the present day charges and is more credible than the WIC's model projections. Reform is unlikely to result in a reduction in water charges. Reform will have a negative effect on the local economy and on development, growth and community self-determination. Council data show that the Maori community is the only beneficiary of the reforms. This is consistent with the government's stated preference for Maori control as per the He Puapua report. Council data show that there will be negative impacts on the district workforce and supply chain procurement. Despite the Mayor's personal and publicly stated position that Three Waters reform is the only solution and should have occurred 10 years ago, Council data show that the proposed reforms will have a raft of negative effects on our community. Independent reviews carried out for the Whangarei and Queenstown Lakes District Council show that the WICS modelling is deeply flawed, and as a consequence, the projected advantages will not arise, and in fact, communities will be exposed to additional risks as a result of proposed reform. The Council data make a strong case for opting out of the reforms. It would be negligent for Western Bay of Plenty District Council to make a decision without addressing the flaws exposed by the Castelia and Morrison Low reviews of the WICS modelling. That the letter before this meeting requesting further information from the DIA be changed to conveying a feeling of unease and doubt about the effects of the reform on our community, rather than giving the subliminal message of support as drafted. According to the Waimakariri Mayor, as of yesterday, 60 of the 67 TLAs have opted out of the Three Waters reform, including Waimakariri. Those that have done the analysis have concluded that this is a very poor deal. Any questions?
Dr. McCabe, you said that there could be economies of scale, but the size of Auckland and Wellington with problems, how can it be beneficial for everybody else?
I said it could be. I didn't say there would be, and closer attention needs to be paid to looking at the assumptions made in the WICS modelling to determine whether in fact there would be real advantages in area entity B where this council would be located.
Good morning. Is there anybody who has not had the opportunity to read my presentation? Good. It's short, and I hope it's clear. I've got a limited understanding of the difficulties of being a public official, and my sympathies are with you all. It seems to me that the Mayor's stated position in this issue to opt into the Three Waters proposal is at best premature. It's unfortunate a decision was made not to consult with the local community, especially as a significant number of councils around the country have chosen to do that. There is no precedent I'm aware of for a result to turn out better than assumptions, and many are significantly worse. Most of us in this room here have lived through that in the last 40 years. An elephant in the room for Three Waters is the makeup of the proposed 4 regional authorities. I personally object to the interpretation of a partnership to be a 50-50 split of responsibility when one group represents at best 16% of the population. I'd be interested, Mr. Mayor, to hear a response to any of my comments, and I'm ready to take any questions.
Your report that you're opposed to this proposal. Are you opposed to the reforms proposal, or are you saying that this isn't the option?
Now, what I'm saying is that I think it's premature to make a decision at this point in time, and that there should be consultation with the community. There should be input from experts to test the validity of some of the assumptions made, and to just put your hand up and say, bring it on, is not the right decision.
Good morning, Wayne. Thanks for your submission. Do you support a full consultation with the community to allow full feedback from them? You know, you've talked about the consultation. What level do you think that should be pitched at?
I think from the community, it'll be primarily emotional. I think that the feedback needs to come from the people that are used to doing analysis of a lot of the evidence has been or a lot of the information has been put forward here. You know, I skimmed Bruce's proposal, and there's a lot of detail in there that raises a lot of questions. And I just don't think that analysis has been done at the council level. I think there was a very early decision made to go with the flow. And obviously, as time has gone on, a lot of the councils around the country have not shared that view. And I think that we at the Western Bay should be of a similar ilk, and we should be questioning it. Now, I fully understand that at the end of the day, Mahuta can just say, we're going to do this, and she's going to do that, and that's how it is. But I think we should be strongly objecting to that approach as well.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm Secretary of the Caddycat Way Beach Residents and Ratepayers Association. The executive summary of the Three Waters Reform Report before the Council today states that it does not consider whether to opt in or opt out of this proposal. However, it is quite clear from the wording of the feedback that Council wants to opt in to the proposal. It appears to be an underhanded way of telling the Minister of Local Government that this Council is in favour of her Three Waters reform proposal without having to consult with ratepayers as is required by Section 130 of the Local Government Act. We are extremely concerned by the intent of the recommendation, quote, that Council approves the feedback generally as drafted, unquote, and, quote, that the CEO be delegated power to make editorial changes to attachment 2 and incorporate any late additions that may result from collaboration with other local authorities in NTDB and Mana Whenua. Why is the CEO collaborating with Mana Whenua when he refuses to even consult with the other 84% of the people of the district? There are no reasons for any editorial changes, so if you approve this recommendation, you'll be giving the CEO authority to change a report that the full council have agreed to in any way he likes. It is disgraceful that anyone in this organisation could think that this is acceptable in a democracy. We ask that you remove generally from paragraph 3 and all of paragraph 4. Staff are now reporting that at last count, only 6 of our 67 district and city councils have indicated a desire to opt in to the reform programme. Both Whangarei and Queenstown Lakes district councils obtained advice on the Three Waters proposal from independent consultants. Both lots of consultants expressed concern that many of the WIC's recommendations were based on inaccurate data and faulty assumptions. The Western Bay of Plenty District Council staff report notes there are differences in capital expenditure forecasts between WICs and the long-term plan. For example, capital investment up to 2051 is estimated by WICs at $1,121 million, while the long-term plan estimate is $360 million. That's a difference of 3 times. Staff appear unperturbed by this huge difference, and that's a major concern to us. But these are only estimates. When it comes to basic data, there are also discrepancies. WIC states council borrowings for 3W is 70 million. But the Group Manager Financial and Technology Services informed us in August that it is $92.3 million. And I've heard people say that the total debt is only $60 million. But a 15 million difference appears trivial compared to what we have just learned. Councils were told that all their 3 water debts would be taken over by the new entities. It now appears that is not possible. If the assets are not owned by the entities, they cannot be used as security on loans. And if one of these entities fails, the only way to keep the organisation operating will be a mortgagee sale. How good will Minister Mahuta's guarantee that water will never be privatised be then? Department of Internal Affairs have been working on this proposal for 4 years. If they can't get something as basic as this right, how will they ever be able to set up systems to look after our water? The wording of the report should be changed so that it provides no encouragement for the Minister to pursue this reform program. Thank you.
Amendment or a change, ready to consider the document today. Somebody has to translate it into a letter to the minister. That's the process that there is. They haven't got carte blanche to go out and use the rules. It's to get it from a resolution which is recorded into text so we can set what
it was my understanding that the report would go to the minister.
Yes, it will, but if we decide to make any amendments to it today that hasn't had council approval, that's what we're meeting for today. If there's any amendments, somebody has to translate those amendments into the updated text.
Well, I think perhaps that should be posted on the council's website, shouldn't it?
Well, that's custom practice with the Western Pacific program. It's the way we've always operated, is that?
Well, this is a wee bit more critical than whether you build toilets or something like that. Thank you.
Good morning all, thanks for having us again. And again, some of us were here a few weeks ago regarding the 3 waters, so that's what we're back here for. Because it is such a major issue, and to think that our councillors are even considering the option of giving away one of our major assets is mind-blowing, especially as there has been no consultation with the ratepayers, with the people who funded our water assets and which have served us well. There has been no binding referendum that we asked for last time, and there was time. You could have made time. Mr. Mayor, you keep saying that we haven't had enough information or that you are not required to give an answer now, but it's funny that in the paper and everywhere else, it says that you have to give an indication on by the 1st of October against or for or against the proposal to Minister Mahuta. And she certainly won't need much of a nod to override and push her agenda through. She's actually threatened that. So far, it's noted that most councils are against the proposal, that only 6 are in favour of the offer, and we seriously trust that this council is not one of those 6. This council should by now have realised that many ratepayers are against this proposal. Otherwise, why did you go in the sun saying that we all needed to calm down? Because there is a push for this against this agenda. Our democracy has gone. And obviously the discontent is building. It seems, Mr. Mayor, that you and the CEO, Mr. CEO, both have a conflict of interest in my way of thinking, wanting to transfer large shares of our water assets to iwi. You both have said that. Our CEO, I have never heard him talk about ratepayers at all. He's only ever talked about iwi. Don't the rest of us 85% count at all in all of this? What consideration have we been given? To me, it's just another step closer to apartheid. Also, the declaration you signed on becoming mayor was to be impartially execute in the best interest of all ratepayers with the duties vested in you. This is certainly not looking like the case from where I stand. If you give away this major asset, you certainly will go down in history that in your 3-year term, you have given away 2 major assets of Western Bay Council, the water utilities along with Punny Point. All these assets are worth millions of dollars. How can these actions be conceived as good business management on behalf of the Western Bay ratepayers? Where was the mandate from the ratepayers? Because the Local Government Act says that council must consult on the disposal of major assets. To date, there's been very little, if any. I think both of you need to reconsider your options, and you councillors need to start thinking for yourself. Being here before, I know jolly well that most of you, whatever Mr. Mayor says, that's what you vote on. So you need to start thinking about your ratepayers. You've got an election next year, and you're going to be able to stand up in front of the people, say, I did the right thing by giving away all these properties. Think about it. So Mr. Mayor and Mr. CEO, if you can't take note of what the ratepayers are telling you regarding the 3 waters and vote accordingly as to what ratepayers want, well, I think it's time that you, like I said last time, you need to consider your resignation now. Thank you.
Any questions that anybody might have? Well, it appears not. Thank you very much for your time. We now... Mr. Mead hasn't arrived, so if we can have now Mr. Ross Gowdy, please. Before Mr. Gowdy, if you're going to speak, please use a microphone because the Zoom people, it doesn't connect in unless you've got your microphone on. Thank you.
I presume that it's a yes, I can hear myself, so it's fine. Now, I'll be very short. Our community board had a workshop Monday last week, and we'd hoped the council would have gone to the community and engaged about the information that is available. Other councils have been more forthcoming in engaging the community. Disappointing about the government's TV advertising. It's, well, I won't say it. The big issue for most people is the loss of control of assets that we're paid for. That's general feedback. Resolved for me to be here today, and we, the community board, Waihi Beach, that doesn't include the councillors, we don't want to compromise their objectivity and able to vote on this situation, cannot support the council to opt in the Three Waters proposal because of the lack of information. You keep on saying there's lack of information, but you're still considering it. When the fully detailed proposal is available, we recommend that Western Bay Plenty District Council put that process to the community as a special consultative process. As I know, that's a statutory process and it goes through the rules that we have to obey. So that is the statement from the committee board. I've finished. Any questions?
Councillor Murray-Bench and then Councillor Sol.
Is your community board opposed to this proposal?
Yes, it is.
Sorry, that was my question also, but did the community board have a broader view on things as far as other issues with it?
Yes, they did. As a business case, it should sink. Lack of detail. If you took this proposal to a bank to get financing, well, look, you'd really, well, I don't think they'd even sit down with you. Biggest concern, loss of ownership of Three Waters assets. If this goes ahead, the entity will own the asset. We've had a lot of, the government will own it, or the council will own it, or the ratepayers still own it. I don't think there can be two owners. It has to be the entity because they want to borrow against it. Also, the loss of 30% of the government, the council revenue, that goes out the door, $30 million plus. And that, of course, has a roll-on effect to downsizing the council and revenue coming in and the operations of the council and quite possibly downsizing of the staff because we can't support that with the loss of that revenue. There's huge discrepancies between the long-term projections and the DIA projections as evident in the staff report. Bruce McCabe highlighted that. Contradictory statements about spending more and reducing the price per user. Don't think that's quite, how can it happen? Now, looking at the Queenstown report, they couldn't actually work out who was the user. No discussions about financial contributions. I'm assuming they go with it, but no one has highlighted that. 9,000 more jobs, but greater effectiveness. Seems to be a contradiction in service in things there. And as far as we're concerned, loss of 300 million in assets for 75 million to 95 million in debt doesn't seem right. I was on the video conference earlier on where I think local government New Zealand or the one that was doing the numbers actually dispense with, oh, they're not worth 300 million, that's only a book value. Well, why we got them at 300 million if that's not the case? They have to be updated, yes, but they'll have to update it too. So it's specific one-line things that we're concerned about. Thank you.
For coming in and your input. We now call on Mr. Ewan Lusky, please.
Yeah, morning all. This is not too long either. Mayor and councillors, as you're well aware, when you were elected into council, all newcomers are sworn in and sign a declaration that you will faithfully and impartially and according to the best of skills and judgment, exercise and perform in the best interest of Western Bay District the powers invested in us or imposed upon you. This includes integrity, transparency, the ability to communicate with ratepayers, to consultate and keep them informed about developments in their prospective areas. However, over the last 5 years in which most of you have been in council, a number of you have not kept up with the job you were elected to do, and that includes consultation with the ratepayer. It is a strong debating point as to whether what consulting is and how interpretation is understood. The latest debacle was the rubbish collection, given away to communist ownership, job losses through this, and the former collection was working perfectly. Why did council fix what wasn't broken, or do you call this preventive maintenance? While we're on the subject of consultation, this supposed Three Waters con, which many ratepayers don't understand, let alone know that a substantial increase in rates is inevitable, goes ahead. That's the whole damn situation as to if it is going to go ahead. The water is not a problem. Here we go again. Doesn't need fixing. It's fit for purpose. We do not want a further burden of expense to the ratepayer. Mr. Mayor, show a bit of grit and join forces with the other opposing councils and make a name for yourself. If you don't object to the three waters, you'll have to have consultation with uninformed ratepayers. Incidentally, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned to a group of concerned ratepayers a few months ago, and I was one of them, you're retiring next election. If that is correct, assumably, you won't have any connection whatsoever with Three Waters. If your intentions are otherwise, you have let the ratepayers down big time, and obviously this new venture has been planned for some time, hence the willingness to sign council up to Three Waters. Mr. Weber, you stated in the Sunlight paper just yesterday or day before that it is not yet an appropriate time for extensive community consultation. When is the appropriate time, according to you, as you have had ample opportunities to have this all sorted out? Mr. Mayor, you have a responsibility to tell the truth. And that is my lot.
Sorry. Any questions of Mr. Lusky? No, it appears not. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Thank you.
Our last speaker is Mr. Norm Mayo.
Yeah, hi folks. My name's Norm Mayo, 82 years, lifelong involvement in public affairs in this district. The subject today is the most important test for democracy faced by this council or any other. There's never been a time in my life when there's been a greater need for leadership, courage, and vision. Forget the racist te pur kept secret till after the election. You all know why we are here. Because of our government, led by Jacinda and the iwi lady Mahuta, he wants to confiscate billions of dollars worth of local authority infrastructure throughout New Zealand and assets from New Zealand ratepayers with minimal, insulting compensation, which only a clown would accept, and transfer them to 4 mega groups with powerful control and influence from iwi, which is racist, of course. And if you're unsure what racist mean, I'll lend you my dictionary. Expert analysis say we will pay between 8 and 10% in the dollar compensation for assets built up by generations of wise, forward-thinking, intelligent past councillors. And I'm proud to say some of those councillors are still in this room, and I thank them for that. Current debt is only part of that equation. What sort of clown with any economic wisdom could promote and shaft ratepayers with that sort of nonsense? Government will, but not our ratepayers. Few, if any, will agree with this garbage. I understand most sensible councils will see through this. I understand 61 out of 65 at last count already have. Western Bay District Council is on notice. And a small racist percentage will gain control. If we do not agree with that, I can help you with your homework. I've got screeds of stuff on it. To use and quote Havelock North, which is now improved, or a Scottish model is an insult to our intelligence. It's pure propaganda and spin doctoring, something this government excels at and has spent millions of dollars doing. Read the paper by Queen's Councillor, a very wise man, Gary Judd. He's also the ex-chair of the ASB Bank and the ex-chair of Ports of Auckland. He says, and I quote, "As the proposal deprives local authorities of all the rights of ownership, this new proposed ownership is a fiction. It is a spin on a grand scale. If we are to have any respect at all for democracy, or in fact for current decision makers, we must insist on a binding referendum funded by councils." A suggestion by one councillor that a few people could hold and fund themselves a citizens-initiated referendum was considered insulting. We have already passed up locals and given rubbish collection to communist China. Is Three Waters another nail in the coffin of democracy? The mayor and councillors must publicly clarify their views. The public that elected you deserve and expect this. Please make sure the decision is not passed off to others, be they government, consultants, staff here or elsewhere. We understand in the paper that came out that council's strategic advisor, whoever that is, that council approves the feedback and the CEO be delegated power to make editorial changes. And as Keith mentioned, that is a worry to us. Ratepayers worry that this could result in an abrogation of councillors' responsibilities to their ratepayers. The CEO must not be allowed to make any major changes. I'm not saying he will, I'm saying we want to clarify this. In conclusion, a few comments. 1, please resist the separatist agenda. 2, could you please tell me how creating 9,000 extra jobs equates to saving money? I've been in business all my life, it's got me bluffed. And 3, our lovely, long-suffering ratepayers you represent are waking up, and I can tell you they're trembling with your possible direction and how it will impact on them and their costs and their rates. If the final decision does not reflect ratepayers' opinion, I'm telling you there's going to be hell to pay. Yeah, thank you. I don't think there'll be any questions. There usually isn't.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Just a couple of points. That brings us to the end of our speakers. There's a few misconceptions. The October 1st timeline is to get back with concerns that council may have. It's not an opt-in or an opt-out. The other thing I want to assure you, we've made it very clear in our publications that when we do have a proposal that we think has merit, good or otherwise, it will go out for public consultation. I think this council has shown over the last 9 years that I've been involved that we consult with our public, and we give you our commitment. We will be consulting when we think there is something sensible out of central government. This letter today is about our concerns with the current proposal. So thank you once again for your time. Can somebody move that we go back into forum? Councillor Thwaites, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, now carried. Thank you.
10.6 early so that those who have come in to hear can actually do so.
If that's the wish of the group, can somebody want to move and second that, please? Right, and second, we now go to, just got to work out my pages. I'll put that, we change the order of the item, the order of the agenda, and bring item 10.6 before the others. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. I declare that carried. I will take the paper as read. Are there any questions that anybody may have of the recommendations, or any points of clarification you might want, given this is our instructions that we gave? This is a list of our concerns. Is there any questions that anybody might have of staff? Councillor Daly.
I just wanted to ask a question about point 25. under current legislation, council is prohibited from making a decision to divest its ownership or interest in water service, except to another local government organisation or council controlled organisation. So my question is, obviously we're prohibited to do that, but can the government override that and make a decision?
Unfortunately, the government being the power in the land, they can legislate whichever they wish. But in terms of this council, as I said before, section 130, our own significance policy would suggest, would state that we have to go out to public consult on this. And that's where we've landed as a council. We're determined to do that when we've got something that we can take out for consultation.
Mr. Chairman, point 28, that council will need to consult with the community. Could staff please assure me that we are going to have in place a method of consultation that actually gets the views of the whole community, not just the older group who at the moment have the time to make submissions? Because there's a wide range of the community and we need to get the full community views, I feel.
I'll get the Chief Executive to answer that.
Councillor, yes, we are. We're still in the early stages of creating the communications plan, but given the importance of the issue, it'll be far-reaching.
Thank you.
Councillor Mayo.
Could I please ask on 23, how could this be of medium significance when it's the most important issue ever to come before us?
Sorry, that's the wording in our policies. That's and as you know, we put that policy together. And it's pretty prescriptive. Sorry, Councillor Thwaites.
I was actually going to move recommendation 1, we receive the report, and amend recommendation 2, that this is actually of high significance in terms of policy, following on from Councillor Murray Bench. And if I get a seconder, I'll speak to that because, so I'll move recommendation 1 and 2 with the amended that it is of high significance.
So just change the word medium to high?
Yes.
Thank you. So that's moved Thwaites, seconded Councillor Murray Bench. Can I just park that at the moment? We'll come back to it, but because there's other speakers, Councillor Henry.
Well, are they going to speak to that, or?
I'd just point out that in the report, it clearly states that this position that we're at, where we are still exploring and we are not committing, is of medium significance. It goes on to say that if we were to go and consider going in, it is high.
You'll have that when we come to have the discussion on the amendment. Is anything else prior to we have the discussion on the amendment? Points of clarification, anybody looking for? It's not. So we're now speaking for or against the amendment. Does anybody want to speak for or against? And Mr. Councillor Thwaites got the right of reply. Yes.
I'll speak.
Councillor Murray Bench.
I think, sir, that this is the most important issue that's ever come before council. In my years of time in local government, I've confronted the amalgamation of 89, but this is for a good council like ours, and it is a good council, sir, is just so challenging because I believe we're going to get left behind for those great number of people that will be an entity too, will end up like the Transport Association, National Transport Board, and be just at the bottom of the heap. And we are so well organised, I think, sir, we will find that we will be subsidising everybody else. So I'm very much in favour of this amendment. I'll turn mine off.
I guess that over the last 20 years I've been council, this would be one of the biggest issues that has ever come before council. There was one other issue, and that went to a public, to a referendum, which we got 80% of the general public were against. So I think this is probably one of the biggest things that we can ever, I think Mayo has said it pretty well that this is one of the biggest things that's ever going to come before this council. We've got $300 million that guys like myself and older people right through have worked their ass off for this council and paid for that stuff. To have it taken away and give us $21 million back for what we want to do with that money is an absolute insult. So I think that we've got to look after the ratepayers. We've actually got to have a referendum on it. As the Mayor said, we're going to have one. I'm speaking for, but I'm just going to say what I'm thinking because this is the only time I'm going to have it. And I really haven't really spoken out about a hell of a lot on this, but I am going to now. I listened to Doug Bull on the radio, Wakatani radio, and Doug's a pretty astute man. He said that we should, as councillors, you have to go, the ratepayers have to go and talk to your councillors. We've been told that we can't really go out and talk to councillors about to the ratepayers about this, which I disagree 100%. I have spoken to one heap of people that have come to me and said, this Three Waters is absolutely against what we think. And I've never heard one person say that they're in favour of this. So I think these councillors need to sit down and listen to what the people are saying. We are only elected by the council to do as they want, not as we want. And that's what has been happening. A lot of the time, our own views get put in front of people. So I think that it's time now that we listen to what people are saying. There's a hell of a lot of ratepayers out there and there's only 11 of us or 12 of us in here. So I think that now is the time to stand up and be counted. So that's my views. So that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm against this amendment because we are actually not voting or putting forward our view on the Three Waters. It is about the ideas that we have and the questions that we have, just as Councillor Henry said. And as such, it is a medium significance, not a major significant item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have read the paper and note the rationale for the words medium significance, but I think we have currently a perception problem with our community, and had Councillor Thwaites not moved that amendment, I would have moved it because it is perceived as high significance. I consider it as to be high significance. And okay, the stage we are at now may not be that absolute final high significance, but to not call it high significance on the way through, I think is a disservice to our ratepayers. I will vote for the motion.
While I made my comment before about what was actually written in our notes for today, I would support Councillor Thwaites' amendment to this, because I do agree that this is one of the most significant things, and it is very, very unsettling to myself. And while I have listened to all that has happened in the forum today, I cannot voice my own opinion. I can only ask you questions. But I am very concerned, and I think it is a high priority.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too will be supporting the amendment, and basically on the principle that the people find it of significance, and it really is the key thing here. There is a concept or perception, sorry, of where we are in the public, and it is a major issue. I just feel that in the end, it's important for the people to know that we will consider this as high in our significance policy. And I also feel that they still should be aware that we do take these oaths, and in the end, we will make decisions for the better of our community, our ratepayers.
Thank you. Thank you. I acknowledge those three previous speakers who just spoke, Ranger Henry and Sol, for their support and their words. I endorse them fully. Like I said, the sentence says this report relates to an issue that is considered to be of medium significance, hence my movement, the amendment. I have personally received more emails, probably as many emails from constituents on this issue as I have in the last 10 years, I think. I've had more phone calls yesterday in the orchard. At my phone, I had about 5 phone calls from people approaching me personally. So to me, this is high significance. Things are happening fast. I hear on the radio today, whether I can quote Mike Hoskins or not, but apparently things are moving even beyond our report that we have here, and that the government have even called in an emergency group of selected councils to address the governance issues that has been arranged, that is raised through the meetings already. So like I said, this is a very fluid, excuse the pun, situation, and things are happening very fast beyond this meeting and this report. So with that, I rest that I'll be supporting it.
Do you want that recorded?
No, can we have a division, please? Can we record the votes? Yeah, well, I'd like a division, please. My right to have it.
Yeah, right.
I just called for a division of the vote for all the votes to be recorded.
So the only vote against was Councillor Dean.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible for me to have it recorded that my objection is only procedural? Okay.
We're on now to recommendation 3 on page 91. Is everybody still comfortable with the letter that we put together, or are there some changes that anybody wants to make? So Councillor Scrimgeour and Councillor Murray-Bench.
Yes, I'm somewhat apprehensive. You may think it's well covered, but on page 145, in regard to the issue of local priorities for enabling growth, and there is a paragraph that talks there about decisions being objective, free from political influence and supported by robust business cases. But I just wonder whether that goes far enough in terms of supporting the need for approval of local communities' needs. And I guess has been highlighted today by some in terms of we've got quite a number of small communities in our council area, and sometimes it's hard enough to weigh up those and decide what the priorities are versus, let alone when we're part of a 22 council mix. So I'd be quite keen to see that paragraph strengthened a little bit.
So is that the first local priorities for enabling growth? Have you any suggested wording you want putting in there?
Not at this point, but I could work something out if you gave me a minute, perhaps.
Well, if you can do, I think the other point we need to make, given the comments from some of the people in the public forum, to clear that wordsmithing today is going to be difficult to get it into a letter, but what we'll do is before we send the letter off, we'll send it out to all councillors to make sure you're all comfortable with it before we finally send it off. It will go before the end of the month, but I don't think that's a problem. So if you can work on some wording for that.
Yep.
Councillor,
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Murray-Bench.
I find I can't support the letter to go to anybody at this stage. Councillor Thwaites highlighted the fact that he has received a great deal of emails. I've read every report that's out there that hasn't come from our council. I've read our reports coming from what our staff have done, the work that they have done so far. And I repeat again, this council is a good one. and we do our job well and our assets are in sound condition, and we're going to be the fall guys in the whole proposal. Mr. Chairman, it isn't about water, because water is absolutely necessary for every level thing on this planet. We searched the solar system trying to find a place that we might go to, but it's got to have water with it. So this debate isn't about water, it's about the assets. And the assets are all about the people of the Western Bay of Plenty who over the decades have paid for them. We've borrowed money to actually pay for the assets. We spread it over the life of the asset so that everybody contributes to it. It isn't something, it's a debt that's sensible, because that's how sensible it is to actually do your planning within local government. Now, Mayo made the point about Gary Judd, the QC, who's made a serious submission about the issues that are relating to this proposal. And he mentioned that the fact it was all spin on a grand scale, the rights of ownership. But he then missed out, listing in the legislation does not confer ownership if it does not confer ownership rights. And so today, if we go along and continue to support this proposal, we are going to find that we are not actually representing the people we so-called represent, the ratepayers who've made all those investments over the years. So I thought Mr. Judd's legal report was really quite vital to this whole debate. I looked it out and I asked, our book value of our assets is 389 million. Our staff numbers are 37. Our income from the three functions is 30.27 million, telling our staff that we can protect them with this great conglomeration that's going to be created. We're living in a fool's paradise if we think that we can protect them. Now, I think our council staff have really worked wonderfully well over the years. They've given us the level of support that our community has looked for. So, sir, I can't support the letter going to anybody at this stage. I think the government's got it wrong. This is the first proposal, and there may well be others. I cannot see that our central government can stand by and allows these four entities to borrow billions if it will, like the transport agency, which, you know, as we created that big conglomeration, they can't even give a state high to Omakaroa after planning for it back in 2008 and promising it to be done by 4 laning by 2015. Quite frankly, I'm angry about this whole rotten nonsense, because it's leading us down a path that has no end in sight. And all it's going to do is go round and round in circles. It's like smart growth, Mr. Chairman. We don't make any progress on anything. And all we leave is our poor people paying higher rates. And then, in worse than that, what they have is no decent homes to live in. And because we are too expensive to actually have people come to live here. So I think our feedback should always come to the committee from any workshop that we do. That ticking boxes really infuriated me, and then going from agree to disagree and not being able to be around the table to debate the issues properly with my fellow councillors, I found really quite abhorrent. I would really like, sir, to actually move a recommendation at some stage that the Western Bay of Plenty District Council will not agree to transfer any water, wastewater or stormwater assets to any other entity without first undertaking full consultative process with the Western Bay of Plenty District. And sir, I think that's fundamental to what the people here today are telling us, what the emails that have been pouring into this council are telling us, what the phone calls are telling us, and you just know that there's work to be done. This isn't the only proposal. The government's got plenty of time to figure that out. It's not going to be introduced till 2024. And last night, a friend rang John Carter, the Mayor of Northland, who was telling her that the local government association knows that the government has got this proposal wrong, and they're going down to meet with the government. It's either this week or next week or the following one to actually get them to change their mind. I'm not opposed to the reform. I think reform has to happen because we're out there on our own. We pay 15% GST, every ratepayer in this country, to the government. And what do we get back in return? Well, we certainly don't get a road to State Highway 2 or anything else much from them at the moment. But what we do get, we have to actually work and beg for, and it's really not good enough. I think, sir, that what I would really like to see is that this council stand up and say, we are a confident, respected unit of local government. We have represented our people well. We listen to them. We have not consulted with them, but every other council in the country, it seems as though they have. And all we've done is tick jolly boxes and pretend that that's the way that we're going to make our sensible decisions. So I'm delighted that we're here today, Mr. Mayor, and you've got the experience and the wit and the wisdom to actually lead us through this process. And I'd like to give notice that instead of recommendation 3 and 4, we passed that recommendation that I said, where we would consult with whatever proposal the government finally comes out with. So I think that makes my position fairly clear. I'm opposed.
Going to have to help me. We've been asked by the government to voice our concerns. You're suggesting we don't do that? Well, no, sorry. No, you're saying this is not acceptable. This is us writing a letter voicing our concerns with the current proposal. You don't want to send that. So how does the government know we're unhappy with it?
Because you're going to tell them we're unhappy with it.
But how are we going to do that? We're trying to do that via a letter.
But the letter isn't strong enough, sir.
So going back to my original, what amendments to which part? And Councillor Scrimge has given us one part.
And I'm saying instead of 3 and 4, we pass.
No, sorry. We're talking about the letter, the content of the letter that we want to send.
Well, I'm saying to you, sir, I'm opposed to that. We should be opposing the proposal that the government presently has in place, full stop, and wait for a further proposal to come forward.
So have you got the wording to that recommendation?
Yes, so could you say it once more, please, Margaret? Sorry.
That we don't respond to the request for information.
That we write to the government opposing the proposal. That's clear.
Right. And you've seconded that? Right. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Sir, there's no discussion.
Oh, sorry. We'll have discussion on that then.
I think, as I spoke once before on this, one of the biggest issues in this council is we've got a lot of good staff that have done a lot of work on our wastewater, water, and that a lot of these people are going to lose their jobs over this. And maybe you say, well, this is not going to happen, but they're going to create 9,000 more jobs somewhere. But what is it going to, who's going to pay the difference? Somewhere down the line, the ratepayers are going to end up paying this 9,000 people more. I would rather keep what we've got, keep our staff that we've got. We're doing all right. Maybe we're one of the highest ratepayers in the New Zealand, but I think that what we've got and what we've achieved over the last, well, I don't know, probably 40 years, we're doing bloody well. This is a good council, and for anyone to say anything different, and one woman to come in and say, well, she's going to change it, I can't understand. I just cannot understand how they can do this, because you look around this room, you know, we've done pretty good, and that's all I can say is, oh, just beautiful.
Yeah, I just slightly confused by Councillor Murray Binge's point. There's inherent contradiction in her position, and that she wants consultation, but then she wants us to resolve to oppose it before the consultation's happened. The proposal from government is incomplete at the moment anyway. So why we would not, if there's a chance it might be mandated, why we would not try to improve the proposal before that happens, I don't know. So I won't be supporting her resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a little conflicted, like Councillor Denia. The government has asked us to respond to the problems we find, and I think we are duty bound on behalf of our ratepayers to do so. There are significant issues with the response that we have before us. It's nowhere near strong enough. For example, on page 144, when it talks about the new entities governance framework, and it says we're not going to give feedback on that matter. Why are we not giving feedback on that matter? It's a shambles. The governance framework that they've proposed, multitudinal levels of controlling bodies, a 75% vote to get something done. It's just unworkable and untenable, and we're saying we don't have a comment on it. I can't believe that. And so we need to tell them it's wrong. So we must talk to them. We can't say we're not going to talk to the government, Margaret. So I can't vote. I understand the sentiment, but I can't support that we don't talk to them.
This is a process that has been extremely long-winded and very difficult to deal with. We are dealing with something that is not complete. I'm trying to follow due process in that I am not expressing my view before it goes out to the community for their view. We base our opinion on, we're representatives, so we listen to the community view and then we bring that to the table. None of that has been able to happen yet. None of it. What I would be hoping that we would actually look at some alternative to this proposal when we go out to community. And I might express my view on the rhetoric that has been around this proposal. Currently, the Ministry of Health hold the responsibility for the regulatory authority for the water. They have been remiss in not doing their job and making sure that it has been kept up to standard throughout New Zealand. Surely that's all we need. We don't need to give over our assets to get that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too actually would normally have said, well, I feel I'm conflicted here as well, because I don't altogether mind the idea of even having another way of saying that we will be going out to the public and consulting properly on this if and when something solid comes. But to me, the not for putting in feedback is just, that's a nonsense. We've been lucky that probably LGNZ decided to say, hey, there's a problem here, and if we want to have a say, let's move in beside them a little bit. And that when the government asks or the minister asks for information, to not talk to them is just crazy. That is not going to get us the result we want. The governance issue certainly is a big one, and it is lacking there, but that's basically because we didn't get to discuss that previously as I see it, as it's been put to us. And it probably does need to be looked at. Well, it does need to be looked at. But to me, the fact is that we need to consult, sure, but we also need to give the feedback to the government and protect our ratepayers and give them a say. And if we don't give that feedback, we sure as hell are not doing that. Thank you.
Yes, I won't be supporting this proposal. While other speakers have alluded to the issues that we have with the, sorry, when I say I won't be supporting the proposal, I won't be supporting the recommendation resolution that has been brought before us, because I believe we're duty bound to give consideration to what offers the government might be bringing forward. One of the things that hasn't been talked at length today, as much as some of the others, is the issue of cost. And we've seen the Wicks proposals about how much cheaper it could be to provide these water services over time. I have to say that those appear too good to be true. And there's a well-known saying that if something appears too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. So that does not rule out the opportunity that there may be savings. We have received, and I haven't been counting exactly, but I think there's been something in the order of 50 emails we've received that all started with the words that we must act, is imperative that we act in the best interests of the ratepayers. And I don't believe we would be acting in the best interests of the ratepayers if we did not give consideration to what benefits might come. So while, as I say, the figures as presented at the moment don't seem believable, there potentially is the opportunity there for significant gain. And so I think we're duty bound to make these comments, not necessarily exactly as here as some have highlighted, but to make comment to government on the proposal and see if they will bring forward a more appropriate proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I assume I'm speaking to an amendment by Councillor Murray Bench that the letter actually tells them to what we think. So although I fully support her sentiment, and I believe that's probably the shortest way of getting the message down to Wellington, I definitely will be unfortunately voting against that motion, Councillor Murray Bench, and supporting the other colleagues. I don't know the numbers yet. I nearly would support you just on the grounds of that insulting advertisement that Wellington have put on the TV screen, just as a message, a blunt message. I was at the point of fully supporting you just for that alone. That is just quite insulting. I have severe governance concerns, and I want to hear the latest talks from Phil Goff's been dragged to Wellington to address these issues. So I want to hear those issues. I want to put in our letter that we have with the existing, as of now, severe. I fully support the Deputy Mayor's concerns about if it sounds too good to be true, and that's exactly what I've written down here. Good to be true, that's exactly what it was. I'm sure some of those figures that were produced from Treasury advice was probably some of the same people that predicted unemployment would go to 26% after last year's COVID outbreak. That was Treasury advice last year to the government. Unemployment in this country would hit 26%. And that's the sort of numbers that I'm reading in this report. So I want to question those figures that they've put in there. Ratepayers and consumers can only spend their dollar once. So if you separate it out, it's still the same. I believe we've got to get some answers out of Wellington about this. So I won't be supporting the amendment. I will be supporting a letter asking for more answers on the governance, on the numbers involved, and how this thing could possibly work. Because as Councillor Murray Bench pointed out, NZTA is the exact example of what they're promoting. And while I've sat around this table, 8 people have died, lost their lives, 1 kilometre from when TNL is forecast to finish to my gateway. 8 people have died since I've sat around this table. A further 4, and that's just 1 kilometre. And they talk about deaths. What about those 12 lives that have been lost on that 1 kilometre of road? And yet they raise a handful of sad incidents occurred in Havelock North over the last 50 years. This has been blown out of all proportion and relevance. So I won't be supporting it, but I will be looking to beef up the recommendations in 3.
Councillor Daly.
Yes, I also won't be supporting Margaret's motion, sorry, for the same reasons that have been outlined by other councillors. But and I referred to point 19 in this document, which next steps for government decision making. Next steps are expected to be announced after 30th of September, which would include the timeframes and responsibilities for any community or public consultation. Government has not ruled out legislating for an all-in approach to reform to realise the national interest benefits of the reform. So I think it is important that we provide our feedback and that we've gone through with the matrix and outline our concerns. And because if we just say, look, we don't agree with this and don't tell them why, well, that seems a bit of a sort of a no-brainer. Murray's raised points, or several of you have raised points about governance concerns, and as a alternative or to improve our submission, I'd like to look at page 144 and public participation in decision making about the reform proposals, about opting in or out. The comments are made there. Some are demanding a referendum on the matter. Others want to influence in the decision making in a more general way. Many are concerned about the governance arrangements and are questioning the reliability of the case for reform. I think we could beef up that paragraph or statement or that section of our submission, and because of the point 19 where there is a question mark, I think, about whether there would be any community or public consultation with the next step that the government makes. I think that we need to specify, and I'd even suggest another recommendation in our raft of recommendations, that before the government mandates an all-in approach, that we do have the opportunity to go out for full comprehensive public consultation with our community before they decide to mandate on their own volition. Thank you.
Councillor Gray, if you'd like to unmute yourself and give us your view, thank you.
Morena, everybody. I don't support Councillor Murray Bender's recommendation there. And I think everybody else has covered the points that I'd like to raise as well. I think going back to our community with the facts rather than what the government has given us as a starting point is important. So, yeah, I support this letter going and providing our feedback. Thanks.
Thank you. Rounding that out, we've traversed a fair bit. My own view is I understand the sentiment, but I can't support it because I'd much rather write to government to tell them the concerns we've got. In spite of the view that many have in the public that I'm in support of this, I'm in support of reform, but not of this process. There's a lot of information that we have said all along that we really need to get those things, the things that's been traversed today, those are concerns. I can't support this. Everybody's had the opportunity. Do you want to write a reply?
Yes, I do. I'm appalled to think that I move a motion that we oppose this proposal. I oppose it because it's a flawed proposal in the first place. And if you write back expressing your concerns, as you intend to do, all you're doing is adjusting the flawed process of the flawed proposal in the first place. And this is a flawed one. It isn't something that is just, we'll make some comments on it. For goodness sake, our job is to actually tell the government what we want. And what we want is a proposal that will come to our communities and be acceptable when we go out to consult on it. At the moment, it's not. All the councils in the country just about are saying to the government, you've got it wrong. If you oppose in your letter, you're telling the government you've got it wrong and you want to see another proposal. So don't play games with me. What I'm saying is absolutely true. You've got to tell the government that you don't like it. And that's what you've been hearing from the submitters this morning. And so what do we want to see? They could give us interest-free loans would be a help. They could give us, they could make alternative proposals. But if you just keep going down the track on this one by giving little reform bits that you would like to see done, you are failing your communities badly. And I won't stand by, and my vote will be recorded. You can say what you like, but I will stand up anywhere and defend the view that we have got it wrong by not telling the government that we're opposed to it. At 7 o'clock this morning, I had an email from the Kadikadi board chairman saying we are opposed. And I agree with him totally. I've had enough information, and you have too, to know that what is before you is not right. And if you tell that just because I do it, doesn't mean to say, suggest it, doesn't mean to say it's wrong. Your job is to look further. The proposal is wrong. Then don't put comments on a flawed proposal. That's my argument. Of course, we'll write as to why we say we're opposed. Of course, we can say to them why we want to see better from the government on this. So do what you like, but it is feedback on a flawed proposal, and of that I am totally opposed.
Sorry, on page 142, where the context of this feedback, I think we're most probably better to be a lot stronger in the front end there of our real concerns. We might be best to break for morning tea now to see if somebody wants to go and do some wordsmithing and come back with before we get into moving and seconding any motions. Sorry, Councillor Thwaites.
Can I also suggest that we beef up our feedback regarding consultation with our community and the feedback and the steps that we would be intending to take on our step on what we intend, what we'd like to see done, to beef that up.
So
in the letter,
we'll break for morning tea now and be back at 15:15. When we come back, I'll suspend standing orders so that we can try and help wordsmith this letter amongst ourselves before we actually we'll move back into standing orders to take a recommendation forward. So thank you for your time. We'll be back at 11:15. Thank you.